to 108. The banks are screwing you. The money game is a game of illusions, and nobody owes you anything to the banks, as no one borrowed anything from the banks. These are just some of the assertions that Mc Keown makes in his new book, How the Banks Are Screwing You and What You Can Do About It. And I'm very happy to say he joins me in studio. Marcus, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Now, I'm going to put a scenario to you. A few years ago, the bank loaned me a large sum of money, with which I bought my house, and I'm going to be repaying them for quite a number of years to come. Hopefully I'll be able to keep repaying them. But according to the book, I don't actually owe the bank this money.
No, the bank never loaned you money. You think
they did. Explain that to me.
Okay, what happens is very simple. When you sign an application form for a loan, your signature gives the document power. It becomes a promissory note. The promissory note gets lodged into the bank, the same way a €50 note would get lodged. As soon as that lodgement happens, that money, that $500,000, that 1 million, whatever it might be, appears on the screen. It never existed before. So they never transferred money from an account into another account. Your signature literally created the money. So the money gets created out of thin air. That becomes a part of their asset reality, the asset book. Banks have to reconcile their books, so they open a liability book. The liability book says, we owe. If you ask a bank manager who owes who what, he will say, the person who loaned the money must be repaid. The person who provided the capital must be repaid. Now, what we know is that your signature created the funds, therefore you provided the capital. When the solicitor gets a cheque, that's the bank repaying you the money that you created that they're about to use.
Now, I was under the impression that, and particularly during the boom and the property boom that we had, is that it was the availability of cheap capital on international money markets that the banks could borrow or at fractional interest rates. So there was all this, the markets were awash with cheap money. So the impression I always got, and I'm no financial expert, was that the bank was full of this cheap cash, and that's the reason why they were lending out willy-nilly, millions here, millions there.
And the key word you use is cheap cash. There was never any cheap cash. What there was what's known as fiat money, F-I-A-T. Fiat money is money that does not exist. It's on a computer screen, but there is nothing behind it. So it's very easy to send it out cheap.
All right. Now, isn't that the nature of the banking system and has been for the last 400 or 500 years?
Absolutely. And that's the problem. We haven't ever asked what the true nature of the banking system is. And the true nature of the banking system is to create debt. They're a corporation, they're in the business of making money, and they make money as long as Fionn and Marcus are in debt. But the day we stop creating debt, we're no use to them. So they need to continue to create the illusion of the money game so they can create debt so they can make money.
I went to our friend Dr. Google and tried. I actually wanted to get a kind of dictionary definition of a bank, and this is what I found: a financial institution and a financial intermediary that accepts deposits and channels those deposits into lending activities either directly or through capital markets. A bank connects customers that have capital deficits to customers with capital surpluses. So it essentially connects people with money to people who want money.
Absolutely. Or people who have the perception of having money. The bank has no money. If you go in tomorrow with everyone in this country and say to the bank, first thing tomorrow morning, give me all of my money, the little bit that might be there, and you say, give it all to me, within 30 minutes they'll close the door and say, we have no money.
But isn't that fractional reserve banking where they only keep like an X%?
Yeah, they have a reserve.
Yeah.
But I think the number is as low as 3-point-something% of money is actually real. The rest is non-existent. So what's happening is that...
Well, they would argue that it's lent out for profit.
But what's lent out?
The rest of the money.
But there is none there. There is the illusion of money on the computer screen, but there is actually no money. So, for example, the 31st of May, we're about to go to vote. What are we voting for? We are voting in a stability mechanism that allows Europe to create, out of thin air, 800 billion. What will they do with it? They'll lend it. Now, they create it out of thin air. It will never exist. But then they lend some of this illusionary money to Ireland, and we have to pay it back with an interest.
Okay. The money game is an illusion. This is the assertion you're making.
Mm-hmm.
How, and I suppose, well, the point really that's important to make here is that the thing that provoked you to write this book is you have first-hand evidence of people who've suffered at the hands of banks.
Yes.
And so I presume the experience is a fairly kind of a sharpish one. It's one that's kind of left
horrendous.
You fairly,
horrendous. Deeply sad, deeply disturbing, deeply worrying. And because I live and I work in the world of helping people, self-development, spiritual development, just understanding who am I, limiting beliefs and all that kind of stuff, I found myself a number of years back in a situation where I needed to give something more practical than just a philosophy. To say, change your thinking, do this. I needed to try and give some answers. So I began to investigate this. I had people in my home, my God, Fionn, would you break your heart? These people were suicidal. Some of them had attempted suicide. Some were coming in for help because they had just buried someone who committed suicide. Others were being prescribed depression drugs, and they're not depressed at all. They're sad, they're worried, they're anxious.
Sure.
So I began to investigate it. What I found disgusted me, horrified me, shocked me, saddened me, and I got it backed up and supported off the record by judges. Off the record,
really?
But yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you about the legal standing in just a second, because. But what I want to get to is this. So we've established the assertion that it's an illusory game.
Yes.
So what's the answer? You have all these people in negative equity, all these people who are up sleepless nights worrying about that they owe the bank far much money than they can afford to repay. So, okay, what are they meant to do?
Well, we're the creators of our own destiny. We can think a new future into reality. We can come up with the solutions we need. Even if they don't exist, we can create them. Bit of critical thinking will allow us to do this. Then what we do is we just act upon them. So some of the practical things, get out of the European Union, get out of the European monetary system, print the punt, print it interest-free, debt-free money. So we're dealing with a real something. Write off every residential mortgage in the country. They don't exist anyway. Just press delete. Iceland just did it. Every residential mortgage in the country, gone. They kicked the IMF out. They are now wealthier, happier, and at more peace than they've ever had.
Do you think so?
Absolutely. I'm in communication with people in Iceland all the time. They're going through the change. They're going through elements of the struggle of change and the struggle of reconditioning the mindset to allow you to understand that what we've just spent our lives believing.
But Marcus, why
exist.
even the most ardent anti-Europeans in Ireland, and there are some, why are they not advocating this kind of extreme?
I believe that they don't understand the true nature of who they are. I believe that they still think that there are certain rules and regulations that are needed in accordance to the old ways of thinking. I believe most people have no idea the true fundamental nature of what it is to be here.
If I can't afford to pay my mortgage, and after a while then the bank starts sending me demanding letters, then after a while they send in a bailiff. Mm-hmm. Well, they send a bailiff's letter, then the bailiff shows up, and the bailiff then will bar me from my house and seek to remove me from my house legally. And they'll have legal sanction.
No. Not if you know what you're doing, they can't. He or she cannot do that. And this is ignorance is the greatest gift the bank has. Your ignorance and my ignorance. If we don't know how it works, we won't know what to ask. I stopped paying the banks 2.5 years ago. Everything. Credit cards, loans, mortgage, everything. Not because I wanted to fight with them, not because I wanted to create an argument where the taxpayer would scream, why are we paying your debt? I did it because I believed what was happening was wrong. And I said to the bank, if you can answer these questions and prove that you legally and lawfully have a contract where I owe you money, I'll pay. They haven't yet. I phoned the bank in relation to my mortgage. I said, will you for God's sake take me to court? When is the court date? I'm yet waiting for it. At every level, I've had debts written off. Not only had I a car debt written off, the record of the car debt disappeared from the banking system. It's not even on the computer.
Sean Quinn is in court at the moment, and he's fighting, tooth and nail. Why isn't he going, that's real stuff.
Absolutely.
So how can it be an illusion then?
Sean Quinn knows exactly what I'm talking about. Sean Quinn is doing the homework. He knows what he's doing. He is on the road of taking this where it needs to go.
What I want to get is, are you about radically changing a system, or are you about changing the way people think about the system?
One will do the other.
You think so?
Yeah. When you change the way that people think, or when we allow people to change the way they think themselves, the perception they have of life changes, therefore the experience changes, the expectation changes, the action changes, therefore the outcome changes. All we need to do is get conscious of who we are, why we're here, what it's all about, and ask, what is it that we really want? Like, what do you want your life experience to be? Do you want it to be one of getting up to go to work to stay in debt, or do you want it to be one where you can get up, do a little bit of work, cover your overheads, and spend time with your family, kick ball with the son, play dolls with the daughter, whatever it might be?
Timmy in Waterford said, wasn't there a guy in America who fought the bank for his house with this argument and won?
Right now in America, most homes that have been repossessed have been given back to the people they were taken from. Most. In 2 states in particular, Kansas and Massachusetts, all repossessions, all foreclosures have been reversed. Everything since 2008, because in the States they are fighting this and they're winning, and they understand that the money game, the fiat money game, is a game of illusions. Nobody truly borrowed anything, and right now we're about to see in South Africa the entire government and banking system been taken hauled through the courts. And
so are you saying that in the terms of the bailout, that actual physical money, the billions that the banks got, isn't real physical money?
Read the book, How the Banks Are Screwing You and What You Can Do About It, and you will get a quote in there direct from the Minister for Finance in response to a number of questions I sent in through the Dáil. The Minister for Finance says the bailout is a promissory note. There is no money. There was no bailout. It's another signature. It's a promise to pay. So there has been no bailout. No money was transferred from anywhere to anywhere. It's a little bit like when you think you take a mortgage, you think you get your mortgage, you get your cheque off the solicitor, and the solicitor puts the cheque right back into the bank account.
But Marcus, isn't that the point of money? Once we take money off the gold standard, so there is no equivalent amount of gold to back it up should we want to cash in our
It's a confidence
euros.
game.
Well, it's a confidence game, or it's a question of societal trust that we, like, what essentially I have is a piece of paper that's printed by the state, and I believe, or we as a society accept that it's worth €10 or €20.
But the problem is we're not getting a chance anymore to say what it is worth. We're responding to the banking system telling us what it's worth. You go into a bank tomorrow morning and you try to buy £20 sterling with your euro, there'll be three different values. There's the buying value, the selling value, and then there's the value that lies in between that fluctuates all of the time.
Yeah.
So who sets that value? Who decides it's worth that? The people who run the finance system decide it. You don't and I don't.
No.
I agree.
And I don't think there's any listener, I don't think anyone in the right mind would disagree with you on that point.
But I do believe that we in the future can create a system within a society and a culture that allows us to decide the true value of what it is we're doing and how we're doing it. Let me give you a perfect example of how this works. This will just absolutely dumbfound you. I don't charge for anything in my life. With the exception of the price in the book, which is a publisher's issue, not mine, I work only for donation. I got a phone call 18 months ago from the health service who wanted me to go in and do some facilitation work, which is an old world I came from, a lot of consultancy work and facilitation work. And they said to me, look, there's a tender going out we want you to put in for. Now, in the world I come from, that means the job's yours. Okay, so I said, okay, I'll do that. And I put in the tender and I said, look, you need to know now there is no fee. I work donation only. So you set the fee. And I give an explanation. I said, this is a consciousness issue. I'm asking you to consciously sit down and ask, what will we pay him? What is it worth? Why are we bringing him in the first place? Do we really need him? And what is the budget we can truly afford to give?
But isn't that the great definition of entrepreneur, is someone who can find something of inherently no value and make money on it?
They gave the job to someone who charged a fortune. They phoned me back and said, we can't do this. We don't understand this. Now, if they said to me, we'll give you €50 for that day's work, I would have done it, because that is the honour that I have in the work that I do. Whatever is given is an exchange, and I accept it.
But, okay, so you work on the basis of trust, on reciprocal trust. But isn't that what the thing you're saying is an illusion? It's another example of reciprocal trust. I trust that this money will get me X amounts worth because it says it on the piece of paper, but that fundamentally that piece of paper in and of itself is worth literally the paper it's printed on.
I'm talking about creating a society of trust when we are trusting the things that we are allowed to create.
Right. Okay, so it's about moving the emphasis of trust.
Absolutely. Well, of course, look, you look at the government at the moment. The government are acting totally outside the box. They're acting illegally. The government's job is not to do what they're doing.
I mean, on what basis are you saying that they're acting illegally?
Well, the government's job is there to help govern, not to make all of the decisions. Now, they'll argue that there's a democracy and we put them in power and we...
I would imagine the Supreme Court are also arguing that they're doing everything within the law.
Well, the Supreme Court, the judges of the court...
But aren't they the arbiters of our law?
They all work for the government. What law? Listen, a judge told me off the record, I asked him in his home in researching this book, I said to him,
can you give a name to the judge?
For liable reasons, I don't know if I can, actually.
Well, this is exactly why I'm asking, because for those very same reasons, to say that the government are behaving outside the law is... You know, that's if you can't back up that assertion.
Constitutionally, the government are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. The government are meant to be governing the country, not making all the decisions and not selling our sovereignty.
But the government would argue that that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing is that, of course, we're in austerity. Of course, these are difficult times, but that they're thinking long term.
Okay, but I have no doubt in my mind Enda Kenny actually believes he is doing what is best for the country. I have no doubt in my mind he has no bloody idea what is best for this country. He doesn't understand the nature of human beings. He does not understand the pain and the torture people are going through. He doesn't understand the fear they're living with. He doesn't understand the disempowerment they're living with. He understands his agenda. He is now trying to validate 40 years of having nothing as a politician. And he has to do that by being what he believes, according to his perception, is the best Taoiseach he can be. Well, he has let down everybody in this country. Everybody. He is selling the sovereignty, he is selling the country, he is selling himself,